On to Rams and Seahawks. This line at a pick'em at some books. It was as high as 2.5 earlier in the week, but that was early Monday before the news came out that Matt Stafford was going to return this week off of the sprained ligament in his right thumb on his throwing hand. So there are some Rams +1 still available. I got LA at +1. I would bet this up to -1. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Rams closed as a favorite here. And to the point that I brought up with the big matchup between the Seahawks and the 49ers next week, not only do I think this is a look-ahead spot for Seattle, and you may say Seattle isn't going to take LA lightly just because they lost to the Rams in week 1, but the Rams are coming off the bye. You're getting Stafford seemingly healthy or healthier, and Stafford has performed really well against cover 3 coverage, especially against the Seahawks. When you look back at week 1, 8.8 yards per pass attempt, and zone coverage in general. And the Seahawks run the most zone coverage in the league. And that goes back to historically and traditionally with Pete Carroll manning the Seahawks defense. So I think you do see positive aggression for the Rams offense. The Rams over their last 2 games in that blowout loss to Dallas and whatever that game was against the Packers, combining over those 2 weeks to rank number 26 across the NFL in EPA per play. You also look back at the week 1 game. The Rams didn't have Cooper Kupp on the field, and Kupp has destroyed cover 3 coverage in his career. 30%, over a 30% target share, and over a 30% target per route run versus cover 3 looks since 2021. So even with Seattle's defense improving, at least going back to last year in the secondary with Devon Witherspoon, the rookie cornerback from Illinois, I think he ranks 12th in Pro Football Focus among coverage corners this year, but Seattle's secondary has still struggled overall. They've allowed an above average EPA per dropback and dropback success rate. And I mentioned this last week, correlated with the Steelers, or just in comparison to the Steelers. Both of those teams between Seattle and Pittsburgh have the widest gap in plays per game on offense and defense. Seattle with just under less than 9 plays per game on offense. So Seattle's defense is worn down, and that was a grinded out game against the Commanders last week that came down to the wire. One of 6 games that ended in a game-winning field goal. Seattle didn't cover the number. I got a little bit fortunate with Washington scoring a touchdown in the final 2 minutes. I was on the Commanders +6.5, but Geno Smith, too. I brought this up with my Seahawks and Commanders handicap last week. Still below league average, ranking 13th in adjusted EPA per play, or 13th lowest, I should say, adjusted EPA per play among qualified quarterbacks this year. So rest advantage on the side of the Rams. You're getting Stafford back. Much higher ceiling on offense. I love the matchup with Stafford and Kupp against this cover 3 scheme. Obviously not a fan of the Rams defense. They rank below league average in adjusted EPA per play allowed and dropback success rate themselves. But the situational spot definitely favors the Rams. So I like them in what is essentially a de facto pick 'em against Seattle. What do you make of this game, Mo?
I think the line is pretty fair. I think the Seahawks are pretty clearly a better team than the Rams. But alongside kind of what you were saying, I do wonder about this over 46.5. You got 2 teams that can really pass the ball to pretty solid collections of weapons against secondaries that, you have a mediocre one, I guess, maybe for Seattle, although maybe there is some talent, should be good, but really, like you said, hasn't been performing that great. And the Rams have an atrocious secondary. So these 2 teams playing indoors, I think we could see a lot of points in this one. Every time I'm looking at these Rams games, I'm just thinking of what is going to happen when Matt Stafford drops back, because I've talked about it before. If the opposing team can get a pass rush on him and make him move, he's pretty terrible at this point. But can they protect him in this spot against Seattle? I would lean yes against this mediocre Seattle pass rush. So I think both teams should be able to score here. and the line I think is probably about where it should be. But like you said, a lot of sharp action on the Rams, it looks like, all week. They've been getting hit pretty good. I think this opened maybe as high as 3 in some spots. So market, definitely a big fan of Matt Stafford coming back. So we'll see how this one goes, but I am definitely expecting some points here.
And to your point about the Seahawks pressure rate, it's gotten better since they acquired Leonard Williams from the Giants. But yeah, it's not like this is an elite defensive line. And we've seen what happens when Stafford goes up against that, like against Dallas in week 8, Pittsburgh the previous week, although Rams probably should have at least had a chance to get the ball back. A pretty bad call on that 4th and 1 that gave Pittsburgh the first down and essentially ended the game.